The atmosphere after that game was heavy, and you could feel it in every reaction coming out of the Ravens locker room. There was this sense that the moment had slipped away in the most painful way possible, not because the team lacked effort or belief, but because football can sometimes hinge on one single play. Lamar Jackson did not shy away from the emotions of it all. He admitted that, in his mind, the game was always going to come down to someone having to step up and win it. When the kick did not go through, the immediate reaction from many was frustration. But what stood out was how quickly the players closed ranks around a rookie who was suddenly carrying the weight of the loss. Lamar made it clear that mistakes happen, especially for someone still learning at this level, and that dwelling on it would not change the outcome. That mindset spoke volumes about leadership in a moment when blame would have been easy. That does not mean the miss was brushed off as acceptable. Everyone in that building understands how slim the margins are in games like this. You cannot afford to leave points on the field, especially in a rivalry matchup where every possession feels like a battle. Still, the Ravens made it clear that they win together and lose together, and that unity matters when the season is on the line. Emotions were running high on the field as well, and there was a brief flare-up after a play where it looked like an opposing defender added a little extra contact while Lamar was already down. Those moments happen when adrenaline is peaking, and it only added to the tension of a night where nothing came easy. When Lamar faced questions afterward, you could tell he was still processing everything. He was asked about the future, about contracts, about coaching situations, and his response was honest and raw. He had just walked off the field after a crushing loss, and his focus was still locked on what had just happened between the lines. Being asked to jump ahead to next season or long-term decisions felt disconnected from the reality of the moment. He admitted he was stunned, still trying to understand how a game that felt within reach had slipped away. That reaction was not avoidance, it was the reality of a competitor who had poured everything into the night. What often gets lost in these conversations is how much Lamar actually did to keep the Ravens alive. There is a narrative that follows him nationally, one that questions whether he can rise to the occasion when the stakes are highest. That narrative ignores stretches like this game, especially late, where he put together drives that were nothing short of elite. In the fourth quarter, he looked in complete control, delivering touchdown passes, reading the defense, and putting his team in position to win. Those drives were not lucky or fluky. They were the result of poise, vision, and confidence under pressure. Statistically, his night was strong. He completed 11 of 18 passes for 238 yards, threw 3 touchdown passes, and had 1 interception that came on a strange sequence that did not reflect poor decision making. He was not running as much as fans are used to seeing, and that has been a theme this season. Part of that has to do with how often he has taken hits in previous years, and part of it is simply how defenses have adjusted. Even without heavy use of his legs, he still dictated the game when it mattered most. After the final whistle, Lamar's frustration spilled onto social media, and it was directed at a moment that many Ravens fans are still trying to understand. On the final kick, there appeared to be a violation involving leverage and contact with the long snapper. According to the rules, defenders are not allowed to propel themselves off other players or make contact with the snapper during a kick. Watching the replay, it looked like there was clear contact and assistance used to elevate for the block attempt. It was the kind of call that has been made before, including against the Ravens earlier in the season. In a similar situation, that inconsistency is what fuels the anger. In a previous matchup, Baltimore was flagged for unnecessary roughness on a play involving the long snapper, a call that the league later acknowledged was incorrect. This time, with the game on the line, no flag came out. Even opposing fans seemed to expect a penalty in the moment, holding their breath as officials discussed the play when nothing was called. The sense of disbelief set in. Former players and analysts quickly pointed out that similar actions have drawn flags in the past, sometimes for even less obvious contact. From a player's perspective, it is hard not to feel cheated in that situation. Lamar's reaction was not about deflecting blame or creating excuses. It was about fairness and consistency. When rules are enforced one way one week and ignored the next, especially in critical moments, it leaves players feeling powerless. That frustration is understandable, particularly for a quarterback who had just led multiple scoring drives to put his team in position to win. Despite all of that, Lamar never crossed the line into throwing teammates under the bus. That has never been his style. He understands football as the ultimate team sport. and his comments reflected that. Still, there is a bigger question lingering beneath the surface. How much frustration has been building over time? How many moments like this can stack up before they start to weigh on a player who desperately wants to get over the hump and bring a championship to his city? This season has not been easy for him. Injuries have disrupted rhythm, limited options, and forced adjustments week after week. For the first time in his career, he has had to navigate prolonged physical adversity while still carrying the expectations that come with being the face of the franchise. Through it all, there have been flashes, especially late in games, where he has shown exactly what critics claim he cannot do, and this one. During a span of just a few minutes in the fourth quarter, he delivered 3 drives that felt like legacy-defining moments, keeping Baltimore alive when everything was on the brink. The painful part is that football does not always reward those efforts immediately. The defense had moments where it could not get stops. Special teams faltered at the worst possible time, and the margin for error disappeared. Lamar was not perfect, but he was far from the reason the Ravens walked off the field without a win. If anything, he was the reason they were still standing in the final seconds, believing that victory was still possible. As the dust settled on that loss, the conversation around the Ravens inevitably shifted. From what happened on the field to what it means for the future of the organization. The offseason arrived abruptly, and with it came difficult questions that can no longer be avoided. Change is a word that makes any fan base uncomfortable, but it becomes unavoidable when a season ends with the feeling that more was within reach. The focus quickly turned toward leadership and whether the same voices can continue to guide this team forward after another painful exit. There has been growing discussion about whether the Ravens need a different approach, especially on the sidelines, when former players begin openly questioning decisions and direction. It reflects a broader frustration that many fans have been feeling for a while. One of the most glaring talking points from the game was how the offense shifted away from what was working. The running game, powered by a dominant first-half performance, seemed to lose priority as the game went on. Early on, the ground attack was controlling tempo, wearing down the defense, and creating manageable situations. Then, almost without warning, those opportunities became fewer and farther between. In the first half, the Ravens imposed their will on the ground, moving the ball with authority and balance. That physical presence helped set the tone and opened up the passing game. In the second half, however, those carries dropped off sharply, and with them went the rhythm that had been established. Some point to game flow as the explanation, noting how the score tightened and momentum swung back and forth. But when a game is within one possession, abandoning a strength can feel like overthinking rather than adapting. The Ravens were never truly out of it, and yet the offense felt like it drifted away from its identity at critical moments. Defensively, the issues were just as concerning. There were opportunities to seize control, to force uncomfortable situations for the opposing quarterback, and to change the narrative of the game. Those moments never fully materialized. Pressure was inconsistent, and the secondary was often left exposed without the support it needed. When you cannot generate disruption up front, everything behind it becomes more difficult. The opposing offense stayed composed, converted key situations, and answered every score with one of their own. That inability to create separation turned the game into a dangerous back and forth that left no room for error. When momentum is in your favor, you have to capitalize. That was the underlying message echoed by those analyzing the game. Afterward, the Ravens had chances to pull away, to force desperation, to make the other side chase. Instead, they allowed the door to stay open. And in this league, that is all a good team needs. Playing with fire for too long eventually leads to getting burned. And that is exactly how it felt as the final minutes unfolded. All of this circles back to accountability and direction. When a season ends this way, the head coach becomes a central figure in the discussion. Fairly or not, decisions made throughout the game, from play-calling tendencies to defensive adjustments, are dissected under a microscope. There is a belief among some that a new voice could spark a different outcome, that hearing the same messages year after year can sometimes lose their impact. Others argue that stability has value and that the margins between winning and losing are thinner than they appear. What complicates the situation is that moving on at the top would likely mean sweeping changes throughout the staff. Rarely does a head coach depart alone. Coordinators, position coaches, and entire systems can shift overnight. That kind of reset brings risk, especially when you have a franchise quarterback in his prime. Any decision has to weigh continuity against the possibility of unlocking something greater. It is not a simple equation, and there are no guarantees on either side. One thing is clear, though. This team cannot afford to waste performances like the one Lamar delivered in the biggest moments. For years, critics have challenged him to take over late in games and push his team across the finish line. In this matchup, he did exactly that. Not once, but repeatedly, he delivered when the pressure was at its peak, answering every challenge with precision and calm. The fact that it still was not enough only adds to the frustration surrounding this season. There is also the emotional toll to consider. Losses like this linger, especially when players feel they did what was asked of them and more. The sense that external factors, missed opportunities, and questionable moments all converged at once can weigh heavily during a long off-season. For a competitor like Lamar, that feeling does not fade easily. It becomes fuel. But it can also become a burden if the same patterns continue to repeat. Looking ahead, the Ravens stand at a crossroads. The roster has talent. The quarterback has proven he can rise in critical moments, and the fan base remains passionate and invested. But the margin between being good and being great in this league is ruthless. Small decisions, subtle adjustments, and timely execution often define entire seasons, whether the answers lie in tactical changes, philosophical shifts, or structural decisions remains to be seen. What cannot be ignored is the urgency. Windows in the NFL do not stay open forever. Every season that ends without a deep run adds pressure, both internally and externally. The challenge for Baltimore now is to take the lessons from this loss and turn them into progress, rather than regret. That process will involve hard conversations, honest evaluations, and a clear vision for how to maximize what they have while addressing what continues to fall short. There is also the question of identity that continues to hover over this team. At their best, the Ravens have always been physical, disciplined, and relentless. A group that dictates terms instead of reacting to them in stretches of this season. That identity was clear, especially when the offense leaned into balance and the defense played with confidence. But in games like this one, that edge seemed to dull at key moments. When execution slipped or adjustments came late, the Ravens looked like a team searching for answers instead of imposing their will. And that contrast has been frustrating for players and fans alike. From a locker room standpoint, the belief in Lamar has never wavered. Teammates see the work, the preparation, and the way he responds when the spotlight is brightest. That is why moments like this loss sting even more. When your quarterback does everything in his power to put you in position to win, the expectation is that the rest of the operation rises with him. When that does not happen consistently, it creates an imbalance that eventually shows up in the final result. Trust remains strong, but trust alone cannot fix recurring breakdowns. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. The NFL woke up to a thunderclap of speculation after whispers began circulating that the Baltimore Ravens may be preparing one of the most audacious moves in recent memory. Around league circles, the rumor is simple and explosive. Justin Jefferson could be heading to Baltimore, lining up alongside Lamar Jackson in an offense that already keeps defensive coordinators awake at night. Nothing has been confirmed, and that only fuels the intrigue. Sources close to the situation suggest that Baltimore's front office has been quietly exploring a blockbuster scenario, one that would instantly redefine the balance of power in the AFC. The idea of Jefferson in purple and black feels almost unreal, yet insiders insist the conversations are real, complex, and bold enough to match the Ravens' ambitions. For years, Lamar Jackson has been the engine of Baltimore's identity, a quarterback capable of bending defenses with his legs and his arm. Pairing him with a receiver widely regarded as one of the most complete and feared playmakers in football would represent a philosophical leap. Jefferson's precision, route running artistry, and ability to turn routine plays into highlights would stretch defenses horizontally and vertically, creating a nightmare scenario for opponents. Round the league, executives and analysts are split between disbelief and fascination. Some view the move as nearly impossible, given contracts and the magnitude of compensation involved. Others argue that Baltimore has never shied away from aggressive thinking, especially when the window to contend feels wide open. The mere possibility has already shifted conversations in locker rooms and front offices, with teams wondering how they would adjust if this partnership became reality. Fans, meanwhile, are dreaming. Social media buzz paints vivid pictures of Jefferson drawing double coverage, while Jackson exploits the chaos, or of late-game moments where defenses must choose their poison, even as a rumor. The concept alone has injected fresh electricity into the league's narrative. Whether this is a masterstroke in the making or simply the boldest smokescreen of the year, one thing is clear: the NFL is watching Baltimore closely. If this speculation turns into substance, defenses may soon face a new terror, forged by the union of Lamar Jackson's brilliance and Justin Jefferson's star power. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.